So good to see all of you. Thank you so much for coming, and you're very welcome. My name is Mildred Barrier, and I do these events. I enjoy doing these events, and my work is really simple. Okay,
Yeah.
don't touch.
Hands free.
Yes. So we have 4 poets, but sadly, Stevie Edwards is not here today because she fell sick. But what we will do is hear her 3 poems. And I will read one, and then Kathy Nelson is going to read 2, and then start into her own reading. So what that means is that I'm going to introduce the 4 poets at once, because I like to do it at once and then sit instead of interrupting the readings and coming in between. And once the poets begin reading, they are free to say more, because what I have are really brief bios, but they are free to say more that I do not have. So the first reader is going to be Stevie Edwards, or at least you'll hear her poem. And she is the author of collections Quiet Armor, Sadness Workshop, Humanly, and Good Grief. Her poems have appeared in Poetry, American Poetry Review, the Southern Review, and elsewhere. She is a lecturer at Clemson University and poetry editor of the South Carolina Review. She holds an MFA from Cornell University and a PhD from the University of North Texas. Our second reader is going to be Kathy Nelson, formerly of Asheville and currently living in Nevada. Welcome back, Catherine. She's a recipient of the James Dickey Prize, an MFA graduate of the Warren Wilson Program for Writers, and a Nevada Arts Council Fellow. She is the author of The Ledger of Mistakes, which came out of Terrapin Books, and her work is also published in About Place, New Ohio Review, Tar River Poetry, Starring, Literary Journal, Verse Daily, and elsewhere. And if you received information about these poets, you'll notice that each of them, they all have websites. So if you want to know more that I've not said, feel free to click their websites. And the third reader is going to be Nicole Farmer, who has published 2 poetry books, Wet Under Belly Wind, which came out of Finishing Line Press, and Honest Sonnets, Memories from an Unorthodox Childhood in Verse. Her poems have been published in over 40 magazines, including Kaklark, Poetry South, Wisconsin Review, 86 Logic, Drunk Monkeys, and Wild Roof Journal. She was awarded the first prize in prose poetry from Bacopa Literary Review in 2020, and she lives in Asheville with her husband and Grumpy Terrier. The last reader is going to be Kenneth Chamlee, the author of If Not These Things, and the latest collection, The Best Material for the Artist in the World, which is a poetic biography of 19th century American landscape painter Albert Bierstadt. And it came out of Stephen Austin State University Press. Ken is Emeritus Professor of English at Brevard College in North Carolina and now teaches for the Great Smokies Writing Program of UNC Asheville. In 2022 to 2023, Ken was the Western Region Gilbert Chappell Distinguished Poet for the North Carolina Poetry Society. And feel free to visit Ken's website and learn more. So now I'm going to read one poem by Stevie Edwards, and then I'll sit down and Kathy Nelson will come here and continue. And the title is Parthenogenesis. When my mother was young, she feared she was such a good Christian girl, God might grow his new son inside her, like we prop seeds into the garden, without asking the soil its thoughts on plumping up pumpkins and peas. And who would believe her? Sister of the town's worst poison-headed hooligans, she tried to do enough good to make up for their transgressions, joined a church that forbade dancing, finished her homework, said her prayers, as if a family's fate balanced on a seesaw, and she couldn't keep her brothers from flinging off through the stratosphere and never returning to her on earth from Ether's heights. In New England, aquarium, an anaconda has borne fruit of only her making. No contact with males. Her body wanted a child and made one. Wonder of wonders, a child with only her DNA slithers into the world. I haven't conjured any miracles out of myself yet in this lifetime. I fear I never will be a witch or a martyr, that I won't be good or bad enough to warrant progeny or remembrance. I used to want to turn my pain into wine stains and watercolors, but now I want it not to touch anyone, to keep it from brushing my love's arm. What if all I want is quiet, a dog at my feet, television remote in hand, half a turkey sandwich with light mayo and orange cheese? Who will sing for me? Often I hope nobody will. I would like a good long sleep. Thank you.
I'm going to read two more poems by Stevie Edwards. How to make beef stew. On a cold February night, when the sky halfway across the world explodes with red old hate, saute onions in olive oil in the bottom of a Dutch oven, heavy as a kettlebell for squatting your quads into sturdy weapons. Add a quarter bulb of minced garlic and cook until it smells like a good vampire repellent. Brown the blood red cubes of sacrifice and sprinkle a little flour, salt, and pepper on top so it covers the dead animal. A little like snow can coat a body frozen alone on the ground, with the guts bursting through a new opening it never wanted. Squeeze the last of the tomato paste into the pot, stir, and be grateful. Add the broth and potatoes and carrots and a small flood of red cheap wine and any herbs left unrotten in the back corner of the fetid crisper drawer, and simmer for hours until your house smells like a home, like the children you won't bring into this slaughter sky, would be lucky and warmed through to their fragile bones. All the heavens were a bell, after Emily Dickinson. Last summer, pain took a fifth of my body weight, seared a no in my stomach with its endless, please, ibuprofen, please, sumatriptan, I would do anything, please, to not revolve around this igneous planet's swelling gravity, closing my books, pulling me into bed, shutting off my lights. Tornadoes reopened pain's red mouth in my brain this week. It's natural, my neurologist says, for weather to do this to you. In olden days, naturally, I would have died young, always a sickly child. I wouldn't have lived to bear this lonely eruption. At least you'll have a good excuse for Botox, a friend says. And I'm supposed to laugh on cue because I am a woman with smooth skin covering the blurring throb of this God who rules my days, says, today will be your day of rest. And so I take my Sabbath how it's given to me, like lava has captured me in a quiet daily ritual. I stay frozen at the kitchen table, head in hands, coffee cup half full. I apologize to Stevie for stumbling over that one word. I practiced it, I really did. I just can't tell you how lovely this is to be here and see so many familiar faces, beloved friends. Thank you, Malaprops, for having me, and thank you to also to the Nevada Arts Council, whose support has in part made it possible for me to be here. And I'm really happy to be reading with Ken and Stevie and Nicole as well. Easter, 1956. The magnolia blossoms in the wallpaper behind us, her straw cloche scattered with lilacs. My face shines in the flash, stiff organza, netted rosebud headband. My mother tilts her head toward me, smiling. I slide the photo from its frame again to see her hand reaching the way my hem drapes across her fingers. Not so much restraining as inviting, coaxing me to defer escape from the camera frame. Not quite forbearance, not quite melancholy. Once in a dream, I awoke from numb forgetting, remembered, oh, the longing, a daughter I'd never known, lost in the night. On the horizon, beacons shone, but I stumbled in a canyon of talus slopes and boulders. I never had the dream again, and it's just as well. A person could be destroyed by such hopelessness. I have been my mother, and I have been my daughter. I have driven slowly along a curb, cajoling my girl, honey, please get back in. And I have raced along a corridor, a walker scraping behind me, a plaintive voice calling my name. I've lied, and I've been the one lied to. The advocate and the adversary, the swatter and the fly, the witness and the one afraid to look. I have shrunk from the cliff's edge, and I have marveled at the possibilities of flight. My husband asked me, was I nervous? I said, no, I lied. Another buoyancy. A wonder none of us ever drowned. My mother laughing, telling the story again, Gulf Coast summer heat, the treacherous log flume, the rush of brackish water, no lessons, no lifeguard, no ladder. Swimming, they called it, she and her cousins, all boys, though a panicked flail and gasp was what it was. I could never figure her laughter. I can't imagine the ovum that with my father's thrust would become this body, already there, a little moon shining in the night like a secret, a tiny pearl packed among her sisters, a world emerging lucent from the face of the deep, floating there in my mother's placid waters. Under the canopy of night, cool metal under bare feet, the pulse of ripples against the side of a small boat, a lantern burning on the bow. A father whispers to his young daughter, reminds her to keep quiet as she can, not to scare the fish. The small girl, the melody of the lake, her father's stillness, the rocking. I've gotten old enough that, and there have been enough of wars that I feel like I have to explain to people that this is a poem about World War II. Maybe not to this audience, but to many audiences. My father, just home from the war, Hawaiian girls, cigarettes, Midway locked in his ditty box, the key dropped in the Pacific, but not to stay. The GI Bill, the lure of a college town, the same endless wind-wrecked plain as home, but the world so much wider. And there she is, his will-be wife, my mother. Not so foreign as the island girls, but glamorous. Lipstick, sultry film star smile, the tiny gap between her teeth and invitation. Not like the plain girl at home, his mother mentioned every letter, docile, modest, in the front pew. The wedding, pearls, magnolia blossoms, Gulf damp heat, the groom's sister crying, the bride's cousins smirking, sipping at their pocket flasks. A bill shoved hard along the bride's wrist, into her sleeve, her mother's hiss, enough to get you home when you wake up and see the mistake you've made. My father beside my mother in the car, her hand in his. With the cash, she buys him a gold band. Boundary. Scrawny, long-armed, four-thumbed, the baby knuckle walks down a green slope to a weedy patch. The silverback surveils a mountain, massive, slack squat. Focus of a samurai. The mother, twig in her mouth, glances from one to the other, vigilant, zoo-born, jungle innocent. Gorilla, barangay, endangered. Familiar and strange at once. Like driving past my childhood home after decades, after several owners, the man pulling weeds in the yard could be my father. When I was young, men spent afternoons like that, settled on their haunches, forearms draped over knees, old tobacco can for spitting, pocket knife for trimming nails. Some enough, some refusal of the rock wall before him. The silverback pivots, clambers up the slope on all fours. The mother turns and follows, then the baby, like the last straying lines of a parachute drawing in. So some of you know that my husband and I lived in Fairview for 9 years, and the ink wasn't quite dry on the contract when we discovered that copperheads would come and give birth underneath our front porch every year, year after year. Somehow the copperheads made their way into my poems. This poem is after Jack Gilbert. I never thought my mother would slip back in after she died. How astonishing that she's arrived as a copperhead living under the front porch. I stand on the edge and scan the yard. Mostly, I do not see her, but in August, nearing birthing, she eases onto the asphalt to let the sun soothe the cold from her scales. She coils about the drain spout or stretches along the driveway's grass fringe. I know she is my mother because her slow unspooling beguiles me. I know her because I can't take my eyes off her. I watch with that same stitch at my sternum. If I clear my mind of fear, we might reconcile. I suppress my need for her embrace. I imagine I am not the one who needs escaping. At any moment, her languid looping patterns could break into lightning. My husband unlocks the gun safe, warms up on a paper target. She cares nothing about death. She will return one life to the next until I no longer need her. And this is my last poem. I'll just tell you that this poem refers to my mother's descent into Alzheimer's disease and the many trips I made across the mountains to Knoxville, where she lived. It also refers to a flower or a plant called Lunaria. Does anybody know that plant? Yeah, it creates these seed pods that are about that size, discs that are almost transparent. Lunaria, to make that trip again across the Appalachians, to set off at dawn, early spring, make my way among the mountains, stooped shoulders. First blush in the crowns of redbuds, icicles dripping from road-cut schist. When I arrive, she's in the garden as she was. No diagnosis, no documents of surrender. Only the smell of spring mud from the pond, tender buds of cattails, yellow forsythia. She knows me, not the wrench come to dismantle her life, but her child. Her hands are full of the waste of winter, cut stalks, yarrow, thistle at her feet. Then between the leather of her thumb and forefinger, she rubs the seed pods of moonplant, teaches me to strip the dry husks, let the lucent discs shine like silver. Thank you.
First I was coughing and then I was brought to tears. That was really wonderful. First I want to say, can you hear me? Okay. And louder. Okay. I don't want to touch this, but I feel like it could be a little taller. Thank you so much for coming out on such a cold day. I want to thank you. Special thanks to Malaprops for this event, and a special thanks to Mildred Baria for coordinating this. This is my second book of poetry called Honest Sonnets. And I think what I want to say first is that I tried for many years to write a memoir about my childhood, and I failed miserably. Many classes require that you have some photographs, and in the 18 years of my childhood, I moved 15 times. So in all of that moving, most of our photographs were lost. So one afternoon, I opened a book by Diane Seuss, and I read her sonnets. Pardon me. And in 14 lines, she just kind of destroyed what I thought I knew about a sonnet. These are not Shakespearean sonnets, they're American sonnets. There is no iambic pentameter and there are no rhyming couplets. So when I read these, I thought, wow, maybe I can actually do this if I change the format. And it was challenging to tell the story in 14 lines, but it was also, I don't know, somehow freeing, and it worked for me. So the other thing I want to mention is that many writers and poets talk about looking for home, that home and a place that you grew up is very important in your writing, gives you a sense of belonging and maybe a town you grew up in or your people. Because I moved so much, I have come to realize that I don't really have a home, but I do have people that represent my home. So you will see in these poems that it's the people that make, and my family and friends. This first poem is called Toddler. I was raised in a well, scratchy wool. The smell, that smelly tub of rectangle, butt end of the VW bug, where I got to stand and bounce in my sandy feet jammies. No car seat, no belts, just free bumping along from New York City to Vermont over every pothole or icy lump. Car sickness overtaking until I slumped into a feline coil, finger sucking my way to slumber. World whizzing backwards, mom smoking a joint, dad driving in a trench coat, sister biting and pinching me in secretive battle. Blinding blizzard leaving me dizzy and excited for more. No wonder every unexpected joy has taken me longer to grasp. Maturity, late to appear. Backwards, I arrive perfectly in the rear. So I am a child of the 60s and 70s, and I think you could call my parents beatniks first, then hippies, then I don't know, eccentric. This next poem is 1968. I was probably close to 5 years old, and my father was a history professor at a Quaker university called Friendswood College. And that year they decided that classes should not happen in the classroom, they should happen in the greater world. So being a history professor and teaching Central American history, the school bought an old school bus and 18 students, including myself, my sister, my mother and father. We headed off for Mexico, and my father lectured at all the great ruins. Arlo Guthrie was one of the kids in the bus with us. And that's how we lived for about 6 months until my mother finally said, no, you know, we need an apartment to tell the school. We're not sleeping on beaches tonight. Mexico. Lemonade sandwiches, that's what we called them. We would rumble into some little village in Mexico in our old school bus in the early afternoon. All the restaurants would be closed for siesta. My sister and I were always starving, so mom would find a place with doors still open, and we'd sit at a table with brightly colored wax tablecloths where cold tortillas, limes, sugar, and condiments remained. Mom created a meal with a tortilla, sugar, and lime juice. Roll it, and it's delicious. Then it was off to pitch tents on the beach, drink orange Fanta and black coffee. No water, lucky us. No rules, hours of sun and running, yellow streaked days changing our hair to gold. Later that year, just maybe 6 months later, we were in Boston. So these next two poems are in Boston. It's probably, well, I'll say it was a different world from the world that children are growing up in today. And I'm sure many of you can relate to the fact that we had a lot more independence and also responsibility. So Boston. They called us latchkey kids. I wore a red yarn necklace to school each day in kindergarten, a talisman, the tool for entry to our brownstone apartment on display. My older sister walked me there through busy streets and intersections while Mom caught the city bus to her secretarial job. Reappearing at 6 o'clock. Making my way home was my own adventure. We are all separated again. My father is living in New York City. I return home first. Another war with the door. A large, hungry wooden door with all kinds of bad moods and swollen sides that refused to budge. Yelling, begging, kicking on the fortress for the old crone on the 3rd floor to let me in. Sometimes I fell asleep in the snow waiting for the potion Alice drank to reach the keyhole. Vitamins. This is the same year. Time went very fast, like a racing, speeding train, or super slow motion, like a movie reel, and deathly still. All revved up, heart pounding, I run around in small circles or lie very still on the couch and hold onto the cushions with my fist clench and watch the room spin. 3 hours alone every day at age 5 is a whopping long time. I'd make up games and sing. No TV. Too young to read to myself. Mom was a health nut, so no sugar in the house, only raisins. I'd stand on the kitchen counter and reach the Fred Flintstones, sweet and chalky. First 1, then 2, then 5. Time to go visit the nosy old witch upstairs who had Chips Ahoy. Our game was one juicy detail about my wild hippie mom per cookie. Learning how to lie was easy. This next poem is probably 70 or 71. My father was sent to Cambridge, England, and then Norwich, England, to open a new school. He was the interim head of school at that point, and I probably was in 2nd grade. Dog girl. Knowing how much the British love their dogs, I decided to become one. I fetch sticks and retrieve them, sit pretty, jump, lay down, stay, and bark with joy. My palms and knees are scraped, bloody, covered in scabs, eventually calloused and scarred. Not only am I popular with my school chums in Norwich, they bring treats for Nikki, their playground canine pal. Is this what sociologists and anthropologists mean when they talk about how immigrants and outsiders assimilate? It's my first theater project. Casting myself as the lead, writing the script, and doing in-depth character study. My parents are concerned about my mental health, but I was ecstatic in my role play. That led to about 40 years in the theater. I have time for 2 quick ones. This one is for my sister. Something about moving. When it's hard to make friends, made my sister and I very close. She was always my best friend and my playmate. She never showed me, this is called blood. She never showed me cool dance moves, never instructed me how to apply makeup, never whispered who she had a crush on into my willing ears, or shared intimacies that had to do with sex, like some sisters. She was shy and bookish and quiet in public as a teenager, but I could confide in her and she would always listen. She said the same words at the same time as me, falling into peals of uncontrollable laughter. my defender and protector against the world. She was beautiful, lithe, and tall, with long, dark, wavy hair and a turn-up nose that I wished I had. On Halloween, she was the blue witch, I was the green. She taught me how to shoot my first tampon. Always my barometer of the way things are and the way things should be. Again and again, she was the anchor to my wave-tossed heart. I wouldn't say much about this last one. It's about my father and my teen years. If you want to know more about what happens with his illegal activity, you'll have to buy the book. Birthday. Sweet 16 under a giant moonlit crucifix, mounted in the center of a dormant volcano, filled with tin cans, somewhere close to Antigua, Guatemala. No party dress, no dance, no teenage boys hugging the walls, cigarettes hanging from hungry mouths. I'm crawling on all fours in the mud and rain, laughing with Lorenzo the adventurer, my wheeler dealer smuggler dad, while elevated Jesus looks down on us with golden tears. The surprise at the end of our climb, the unexpected reveal. We roll out our sleeping bags, Pop's puking his guts out all night in penance for eating fruit at the open market. No touristy trip, the precursor for the pivotal drug deal.
Good afternoon. Thank you for coming out on a cold, wintry day for some poetry. It's always a pleasure to read at Malaprops. Thank you all for the invitation to be here. Thanks to Mildred and to Stephanie once again. And it's a delight to spend time with Kathy and Nicole and the spirit of Stevie. Wish we were here. Independent bookstores are vitally important, as you know, but without the little magazines and journals around that print the poems that will now appear in the books that we have, we wouldn't have the books. So as a shout out to the little magazines of North Carolina, I'm going to read only poems that have been appeared in magazines published in this state. And that includes Cackalack, Cold Mountain Review, Flying South, Litmosphere, Witness, Appalachia to Hatteras, which is the annual anthology of the Gilbert Chapel Distinguished Poet Series. Also, I'm going to take a second to do a shameless plug since I'm among friends here. The Great Smokies Writing Program starts up their spring schedule next month. I'm teaching a class on persona poems, starts February 15th. I don't believe it is full yet, so please contact me or contact the website for UNCA Great Smokies Writing Program if you're interested. Mildred posted last week that this is the Chinese, this is the year of the dragon in the Chinese calendar. So that is significant to me because so was my birth year back in 18 whatever. And sometimes the idea for a poem is right in front of you, literally, just look down. Embracing my sign at the Chinese restaurant. Dragon. Between bites of Kung Pao chicken, I study the placemat menagerie, fold my tail out of the aisle, huff smoke through cavernous nostrils. Eccentric and passionate, I sort sugar packets from Sweet and Low. No, my kiss stuns like a spoonful of mustard. Your life is complex. In an earlier dynasty, I wed another dragon. We ended as dueling flamethrowers. Marry a monkey or a rat late in life. The monkey I loved was married, and the rat proved herself. So now I break and open a fortune. you will soon create a favorable impression, though not on the woman who saw me drop a tongueful of Fu Young in the Happy Family. Her glance skewered me again. You will travel far and wide, both business and pleasure. I swing my scaly neck from the booth, rise over barrows of gold plate, cowed villagers torch the odd haystack, my glittering tail, the green sword of morning. Avoid the dog. Yesterday's weather served a little bit of notice of winter. We haven't had a whole lot quite yet. While the promise of snow is sometimes exciting, there are days when it's just nice to stay inside and have the leisure to read or write and sit and let the day conjure what memory and direction that it will. Stories not yet written. A mug of amaretto coffee, a crocheted throw as sleep pellets the screen. Lights flicker twice, and a few words thrown down like fat wood might, with a spark and quick breath, kindle a fire like one 3 friends and I stared into a night some decades ago. The day had burned a steep hike and now pulsed with red wine and coals beneath skewers, a lazy smoke gauzing stories not yet written. One, a friend for life, one to wear a shawl of secrets, and one next week a lover. And every snap of the embers ticked towards curfew at our strict college. We needed to gather and douse, yet no one moved except to stir the smoldering. We would be late and in what passed for trouble, but I wanted to live by this stone ring, now a hearth, shadowy trees close as cabin walls, 3 friends dearer than grief, a fire I loved and did not want to leave. I wrote a biography and poems about the 19th century landscape artist Albert Bierstadt, famous for his emblematic scenes of the Rocky Mountains and Yosemite Valley. There are narrative, lyric, and ekphrastic poems in this collection that follow his childhood from New Bedford, Massachusetts, back to Europe, where he did his apprenticeship, and out west and many, many places beyond, in his rather complicated career as an artist. One of the things I wondered about is what would it have been like to be a young man, early 20s, and having scorned the expected careers associated with a whaling town like New Bedford, Massachusetts, and just take off to go to Europe to study with some German master that he had never met. First crossing. I am learning sea love, its whispers and lulls, nudge of wind, spray quickened face, and a stern sky ablaze. But this love rips wave troughs deep as Berkshire ravines, throws spears of lightning and passengers to the rail, gripping cleats and rag dreams as water sweeps away all that is loose, like prayers of the just converted. Mid-passage is a blank, sketchless gray. Trifling swells shrug by with lips of foam as quietly as milk-whiskered cats. Will my teacher think me apt or rude? I left my close world, my brother's jokes, mother wound with worry that I would drown, be pressed into the Dutch Navy, or worse, wed a Methodist and defect. Nimble crew jump at pipes and whistles to stow the jib, unhook a fouled line. Their every swing and step gauged for risk, in the rigging tied as sane for stars. I'll read part of the book's title poem, which is about Bierstadt's first trip west in 1859. He wasn't well known then, so he attached himself to a US Army road crew that was still building roads at that time for a little bit of companionship as well as some protection, as you can imagine, in 1859. At the very time that Bierstadt was out west, his contemporary rival of sorts, painter Frederick Edwin Church, was debuting his masterpiece, Heart of the Andes, in a New York gallery. This is part 4, the closing part of the title poem, The Best Material for the Artist in the World. After South Pass, our small party leaves Lander's crew to its shovels and sweat and puts the blue Wasatch to our backs. We follow a free regress, stopping where we want, shooting grouse and rabbits, sketching, writing letters, enjoying our lives immensely until the game vanishes, then our supplies. Hungry, seeking the Big Blue and Wolf River, we keep painting though we are reduced to water and flour, no leaven to make a biscuit. At last, we ride upon a trapper's camp, nothing but a shallow cave's green scabbed overhang, though the stew and whiskey are welcome. Miles north, a massive prairie fire glows like a pulsing forge reddening night, reminding me that while we mend brushes, Church has brought volcanoes and jungle to a draped gallery in New York. His Andes allures a public keen to peer beyond the fridge of rumor and share a claim. Viewers parse the scene with tubes like glassless telescopes, scouting each circlet's story, lost in equatorial air, fancying bird call, nameless flowers scent and sway. But how much more will they want to see our country's snowcaps and cataracts, buffalo and lodgepoles seen from bluffs? His tropic patent is now my spur. I will stand the Rocky Mountains high on Broadway and invite all the world. The tingle in my hand redoubles. I lift a brand from our campfire, coax its red nib, and sweep my initials toward the lacework of stars above me. I do believe that you can write a poem about most anything. It's just a matter of the language and the treatment that you do. So look around, see what comes to mind, and let it open up. A pinch of gray fluff. A pinch of gray fluff scraped from the dryer's screen is today's mouse of loss. Every week, my shirts grow thinner, jeans tumble toward evanescence. Not wear, but wash and dry seems the agent of attenuation, though a hot shower and pumice soap do not ablate any fat from me, no matter how long I stand in the pressurized spray or work the towel like a belt sander. Clothes hung on a line would not betray any loss at all. Just sunlight drawing dampness back into the cycle of gift and attrition. But who does that now? I throw them into the cold appliance, and when I check the lint trap, find a marriage, a glacier, and a stand of old growth dreams. Thank you. I have one more. This is sort of a New Year's poem. It's a bit of confusion, a bit of resolution. This poem will appear as one of the Poetry in Plain Sight selections in the next round of those posters sponsored by the North Carolina Poetry Society. Bad dub. Something is off today, something not quite. Shadows lag, beeps arrive before backup. Words jump rail at the switchyard and smack into idling trains of thought. Even an extra slather of slackberry jam does not improve my rubber milk biscuit. Today is a bad dub, unsynced lines and lips. I wrote the wrong date on my colander and missed my doctor's appointment. I wanted her to take my pressure and re-skipped my glasses, tune my hearing aid to a station of the cross. I think I'll just pretend it's New Year's and start over. Lunch on some black-eared peas and some dullard greens, drive back resolutions mapped when the tread on my tires was less thin. Thank you.
One more to the poets. Thank you so much, Ken Chamlee and Kathy Nelson, Nicole Farmer, and Stevie Edwards online. And thank you so much, everybody, for being here and for supporting the poets. We have the books, so this is the time when we will have the poets sit together and get ready to autograph for you. The autographs are free. The books will cost a little bit of money for tea and to support Malaprops. And I hope to see you again on Feb 7th for the second quartet reading of the year. Thank you so much and have a wonderful evening.